Now, our visitor from North Carolina, remember way back like a half hour ago when I mentioned him? A really long time ago? Do you want to be up or down? They prefer up. They like up. Okay, so let's go up. Let's start up because we'll do this on video. So for the folks that aren't here, for the poor people that are at the Spotted Owl meeting wasting their night, unfortunately. God love them, though. They needed to be there. Chris McCaffity actually, did you bring a calendar? You guys might remember the calendar. You'll at least, I mean, I know you can't read it from here, but the calendars that we had several of and that were in the drawings. So this is the guy who created the calendar and took the pictures. And just so you know, the pictures in the calendar, I hope you do take a look at it. I actually had him do a print for me. You know, one of them as a print that I can hang up. Pictures are terrific. But moreover than that, he's really smart about all this Agenda 21 stuff on a totally different coastline. So help me welcome Chris McCaffity.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for letting me come out and speak to you. After hearing some of the comments, it sounds like we're going through a similar thing as what's happening with the fisheries on the East Coast. And I've traveled the Morro Bay up to Crescent City and talked to a lot of fishermen, and they're having a very similar thing along the coast. And it's all the bureaucracy, basically. But let me, before I go too far, start with I'm from North Carolina. I started fishing when I was 11 years old. And it's something I love to do. I really enjoyed being a fisherman. I worked hard at it. I worked my way up through the blood, sweat, and tears to owning my own boat, my own permit, and I earned a honest living, responsibly harvesting our nation's seafood for the consumers to enjoy. Not everybody wants to go out there and catch their own fish or can. And so it's up to people like me to go out there and catch them. It's up to the farmer to grow the food. It's up to the lumberjack to go out there and cut down the trees that we need to build the homes and things. And what I'm hoping is that we can unite, and all of us that are being attacked, little small minority groups of people that really don't have the power, money, or numbers to defend themselves against these giant bureaucracies, to stand up, stand united, and say, no, we will not comply to your laws that are restricting our freedom. I believe God gave us that freedom. And the brave men and women in the military, like the veterans here today, have defended that freedom for us from the foreign enemies. And it is our duty to God and country to stand up and defend that freedom from the domestic enemies that threaten it, which are more of a threat than even the foreign enemies at this point. So what I started doing was giving public comments like y'all mentioned here today at the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council. They are one of the sub-bureaucracies under National Marine Fisheries Service, then NOAA, then the Secretary of Commerce is the head bureaucrat over all of that. And so what they told me was that if I didn't like what they were doing, because I pointed out some of the problems and offered a few simple solutions that would mitigate the severe negative impacts of the laws that they are pushing. And these, remind you, these are unelected bureaucrats writing laws that have the threat of force behind them. And they told me, take it up with Congress if you don't like what we're doing to you. And I pointed out how some of what they were doing violated the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which is the law that dictates how America's fisheries are to be managed. They told me, well, we only have to follow one mandate in that entire act. That is the end overfishing within a certain deadline. And I pointed out some of the other acts, like limiting the waste in our fisheries, making efficient use of the resources, and promoting our safety at sea. He said none of those mattered. And I stressed well, that's our safety at sea. He said, that's not our concern. And I told him, if you keep going this way, people will die. And a couple of months after that first meeting, when I went and told the head man about that, Roy Crabtree is his name. He's the Southeast Regional Administrator of National Marine Fisheries Service. And a man lost his life trying to support his 19-month-old baby as a direct result of the laws that compromised our safety, because we had to discard most of what we were catching, even though it floated off behind the boat, slowly dying and going to waste. And then we had to stay longer and in worse weather to make enough money to support ourselves. And the simple solution to that was to manage the possession limits, the quotas with possession limits. And they didn't want to have any part of that. So anyway, I started taking it up with Congress, and I contacted my one congressman and two senators, and my congressman has been very helpful. Walter B. Jones from the 3rd District in North Carolina. He's a great man. He's very supportive and understands Agenda 21. Stands up for a lot of different things about freedom. But outside of that, the senators and congressmen, they wouldn't listen to me if I couldn't donate money or if I wasn't from their district and couldn't vote for them. So what I started doing was, well, first off, I made the calendar like that and started traveling around talking to people, selling the calendar as a way to fuel, keep the fuel in the car and all that stuff. And so they, trying to get people to send comments and make phone calls and things, supporting what I was telling them. And I got some success there, but really the success came when I started making postcards like this. And what I would do is address them to the relevant public servant for the issue that I was talking about, supporting or opposing different issues. And that started working. I had 2,000 postcards to start with made about a bill that took our freedom to fish on the majority of the South Atlantic seafloor through using Agenda 21's precautionary principle. They didn't have enough data on 2 fish. So they assumed a worst-case scenario using that precautionary principle and shut down all of that seafloor to all recreational and commercial bottom fishing. And, everybody, it's mostly me fighting it because most people don't fish out there. And most of the fishermen felt like some of the people here might feel that your public comments fall on deaf ears when you go out there and you talk to these committees and things. They don't care what you say, and honestly, they do not care. They voted unanimously to pass that, or to start that Prop 84. And that's what they do. They don't care what you say. But what I started doing was going beyond them with my comments. I submitted them when they asked for them, but I also sent them to every representative and congressman I could find an email address for. I forward them. Aaron gets a lot of them. I sent them to all kinds of people. And so then they start getting pressure from a lot of different angles, and people start asking, well, why are you doing this? And this doesn't make sense. And there is a better way, because you can't just complain. You do have to offer solutions. And that's the thing. If we offer positive solutions that have a good outcome that achieves some of the goals that everybody wants, we really can get people to understand, hey, this is common sense. It's not rocket science. We don't need a 500-page document of lawyer speak that nobody wants to read, to enforce these laws on us. So anyway, with those 2,000 postcards, they were addressed to the Secretary of Commerce, Gary Locke at the time, and asking him to, pointing out that was that Amendment 17B was the amendment that he should not sign it, asking him not to sign it. And he went ahead and signed it anyway. We still kept on sending postcards to him, and I was sending emails to him, and I called the office, tried to get a meeting with him when I was up in Washington. They didn't want to meet with me, and anyway. So we kept on putting that pressure and pressure. May 10th of this year, we finally got that entire area closure suspended. And that was because of the efforts of good people like you that would make your voice heard. Had it just been me saying it, I don't care how loud I said it, they wouldn't have listened to me. But when enough people make their voice heard, then we can really make a difference because we have power in numbers. And that's what we need to do is unite. And don't think that your comments don't matter or that your voice doesn't matter. It does. And we can also have power by voting with our money. Go out and do things where, if you want fresh local seafood, when you go to the seafood market, ask for it. And that helps that. And same for any other products that are produced here in America. Look for them. Look for locally owned businesses and try to do that. But with the public comments, I try to get them down to a page. Sometimes I go into more depth. But, I'd encourage somebody, you guys get together, somebody write a document up that can write well, and then get everybody here to copy it and send it in to everybody you can. And then you really get a lot of people going. We really do have power in numbers, and it's up to us to stand up and do what we need to do to defend our freedom, because our politicians aren't going to do it, the bureaucracies are not going to do it, and the charitable bureaucracies are not going to do it. There's a lot of charitable groups out there like Pew Charitable Trust, Environmental Defense Fund. There are probably some of these pushing these things, and they're global eco-charities that they don't have our best interest at heart, but they're donated to by big oil companies, and I'm a free market man, and I love, I want the free flow of oil, but they are manipulating this system. Some of the big global corporations, they donate to these charities, and the charities tell the bureaucracies what to do and also get funding from us through the government. And then if the bureaucracy does not do what the global charities said, they sue them. And so that's what they're doing with us and our fisheries. And we don't have the money to fight them in court. They have billions of dollars, and they will win in court because you have a federal judge and a federal bureaucracy and the groups that are the puppet masters for the bureaucracies. So that's where we have to really make our voice heard. And that's our one power that we have, that we really can win this fight. Inform people, offer positive solutions, and stand up for your freedom. It's a gift from God that we should not take for granted. I love my freedom. I love my country. I want my kids to know the freedom that I knew as a child. And it is slipping away. Our sweet lady liberty is dying to death of 1,000 cuts. Every time one of these bureaucracies takes another freedom from us, writes another law, enforced through the barrel of a gun on us, then we lose another freedom. And soon, once we lose 51% of those freedoms, we will be free no more. And then it's time for us to stand up and do what we need to do as American citizens with our freedom to speak. We have a First Amendment right, freedom of speech. We need to stand up and use it. If we don't, we will lose it. And I don't care who is your politician, if he's a Democrat or Republican, you demand the same thing from them. They are our public servants, and it is up to us as their employers to tell them what we expect of them. If we just if we turn them loose, they'll be like any other employee. They'll get away with everything they can. And so, anyway, with that, thank you very much. But right now, 85% of our seafood is being imported from foreign countries that have very little, if any, regulations on how it is harvested or farm raised. And in Asia, what they do is they have big ponds that they raise shrimp and tilapia and things like that in. Remember that, tilapia. If you're going to eat it, get farm raised from America, because when they do it overseas, it is raised in little more than cesspools. And what they do is they put chicken coops and their bird cages over top of these, and those droppings are what feed our food that they're trying to feed to us. And NOAA, the one that y'all don't like, and first on NOAA too, Jane Lubchenco is the director of NOAA. And we need to all stand united in our fight against her, because she is affecting you guys here. She affects the fishermen on all the coast. And so we need to get rid of her, regardless of who is our president next time. Hopefully it'll be Mitt at this point. But anyway, so what happens is 85% is imported from foreign countries. Only 1% of that is checked. Half of that 1% is rejected because it is unfit to eat for some reason. It's got contaminants, it's got antibiotics, hormones, different things like that. So, you really don't know what you're eating when you get that foreign imported seafood. And, you can multiply the value of your weak dollar by buying American seafood. You not only get a better product, but you also help the local fishermen. And hopefully you're getting it from a local seafood market and help that local business in the process. And then with the fish coming up from the deep water, I fish usually in over 100 foot of water. But, this affects a lot of different fish because different fish handle being released better than others. But when a fish comes up from more than 100 foot of water, it gets decompression damage, the bends. And, and this is something, it's kind of, most people don't realize, but their eyes will start popping out of their head sometimes. And they tell us what we need to do is take a needle and poke a hole in that fish and he'll be fine. And they want us to discard these things. And, and he's not going to live. He may sink out of sight where you feel better about yourself, but he's going to die. And so that's where, with those possession limits. I know some of these terms are kind of foreign to you guys, and I understand. And that's why I would be happy to answer any questions. But what they have is quotas set. And I agree with the quotas. You need to have a certain limit. If you ever harvest those fish, they won't be there for future generations. But you do need to manage those quotas with the possession limits, just like you have a bag limit when you go trout fishing or something. You can only keep 2 or 5. And the commercial fishermen, we need to have poundage limits, say 1,000 pounds of this, 500 pounds of that. And they need to be adjusted after 75% of the quota has been filled to a level that fills the quota without a closure. And what that'll do is allow us to go out there and target these fish, because any structure on the bottom is where they'll live. You'll have 5 or 6 different species living around that structure, and you can't help but catch some of all of them. So once the quota is met and it is shut down, those that are illegal, those are the ones you have to throw back. And so with those adjusted possession limits, we could target the fish with a high possession limit while still keeping some of those with the lower limits. And really make efficient use of the resource, give the consumer a dependable supply of our seafood throughout the entire year, and make where we have a safer way to make a living. Because it is important, I'm responsible for the safety of my crew, regardless of the laws that I had to follow. And when that man lost his life trying to support his 19-month-old baby, I saw my mate there. He has 3 kids and and a wife. And I couldn't come home and tell his wife and 3 kids that I lost his, their father and husband over the side of the boat, and he's lost. I don't even have his body for them to see. You know, and that's something that really touched me, that I don't want to do that. It's a dangerous job in the first place, but they don't need to greatly increase our chances of injury or death with incompetent laws that waste our resources, deny you access to our seafood, and destroy our jobs in the process. And what's the worst part about this is that they are doing it maliciously. And I'm sure y'all recognize this in some of what you're fighting. They will create a problem in order to advance an agenda that they want in the first place. And so what they want is a system called catch shares that allocates our fisheries and our resources to a few big global corporations, puts out the small independent fishermen like myself, and then you're dependent on, it could be even foreign countries that own our shares, and then you're dependent on somebody, a few big corporations for your seafood, for our agriculture, and everything basically. So we're no longer, you know, the America that we were, where we were hardworking people out there responsibly harvesting nature's resources and providing for our families, and providing the people that can't access those resources with the access to them. So did you want me to address something else, or I think that was it? Okay, yeah, traveling the state, talked to, like I said, I was down in Morro Bay, talked to the guys there. That fleet is just dwindling away to nothing. And then there's one or two big corporations here that they've already passed the catch share system here, and they're buying up the shares. And so the small independent guys, they either had to sell out to that big corporation, or they just, you know, and that big corporation is the one that buys their fish. So they're kind of in a catch-22. They can't fight against it because then they don't have a way to sell their fish or their crabs or their shrimp or whatever it is they're harvesting. And it's just it's a big vicious cycle that they have going. But anyway, I'll be happy to answer some questions.
And we have it.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How do you poke a hole in a fish that's decompressing?
Well,
Because I've caught a few of them that way, and they're pretty ugly when they come up from several hundred feet of water.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they made us buy this, it's like a giant hypodermic needle. And so when you put it in there, you can hear the air coming out of it. But you know, that fish has got internal damage done to its organs. It's got air bubbles in its bloodstream. And what's going to happen is, rather than killing that fish quickly and using it wisely and then counting it against the quotas, then that fish will slowly die and it will just go to waste. And then they actually count that fish against our quotas anyway. They deduct an average of 30% of our fishing quotas based on the waste that they mandate. And in one case of the red snapper on the East Coast, they are allocating 100%, I believe it's 42 tons of red snapper that they allocate to the dead discards. And I just recently went on a fishing trip with some scientists, and we were having to turn those fish back. We vented them properly. There was a 15-pound beautiful American red snapper that would have fed, you know, several people with 15 pounds of meat. And so they vented it, threw it over the side. It just floated off, kind of floated on the top. Seagull came over, pecked his eyes out. He baked in the sun for hours as he floated off and slowly died. And I pointed that out to the environmentalists that were on there and the fishery managers. You know, and that is cruel and unusual. It is nothing more than government-mandated, premeditated animal abuse. And it offends me so greatly, I never want to fish another day in my life if this is what they're going to force me to do. And that's why I started making that calendar, because I tied my boat to the dock and I haven't fished for over 2 years now commercially, because I don't want to be part of that. And I'm going to fight it, and if what I have to do, if I had to travel coast to coast to talk to everybody one at a time, that is fine. But I will speak to anybody, I will talk to anybody about it, any bureaucrat, any politician, any individual. And what I found is that what happens is groups, organizations, they very rarely will help, but the individual is the one that will help. They'll sign the petition, they'll buy the calendar, they'll stand with me. And if enough of us stand united, there's some level between me and 300 million Americans that we can make anything happen. If all of us stand united, we can do it.